because when you look at the brain, Carl, you see, so the brain is around 3.5 pounds in weight, and it's the most vascular rich organ in the entire body. So it's got so many blood vessels. Then you've got around 87 billion neurons. They are the chief brain cell. They're electrically active. And the way that they communicate with one another is via an electrical signal called a synapse. And every neuron has around 5 to 10,000 connections per cell. So you can imagine your brain, if you do the math on that, it is just trillions of connections per second that your brain is operating on.
I read something recently. It said it might even help birth new brain cells, but only in a couple areas. I think it's olfactory and hippocampus.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I don't know about any other brain areas that birth new cells, but isn't it exciting that we can just go for a walk and have it be good for our noggin?
Yeah, but not just that. You know, what else we're doing is we're building new connections. You know how I said to you earlier, so those 5 to 10,000 connections per cell, they also die off. And if those connections are responsible for how we think, how we process information, how we throw balls, how we see the world, we want those connections there. And when you look at the studies, especially when you look at the scientific studies that are done on how does exercise improve brain health, you'll see that it says in there, brains grow, total gray matter volume grows. You have to think, well, what does that mean? That means that you are growing more connections. So the gray matter of the brain actually looks bigger. So your brain can look bigger on imaging just from exercise alone. But you can age yourself. You can literally have the testosterone reading of a 70-year-old at the age of 40, which is quite scary due to lack of sleep. And we know that testosterone is not just a hormone of libido, it's a hormone of vitality, motivation, strength, and health. So that's one thing. Also, the regeneration of your muscles from the growth hormone that gets released during sleep. But then there's this other camp of literature that I think is really fascinating, which looks at the correlation and association of sleep or lack thereof, sleep deprivation, and immunity. We see that from 6 hours a night of sleep, you can completely change your epigenetic or your genetic code. We've got around 20,000 genes in the human genome. And from 1 week of sleep deprivation, this was actually a study that was done in PNAS, and they showed that healthy men had an epigenetic change of 3%. So they changed 3% of their entire human genome. And the cells or the genes that were upregulated, like switched on, were the tumor-producing cells, and the genes that were switched off were the immunity, the ones that were responsible for immunity. And something that we didn't touch on is muscle mass. And I think that this is very underrated as well, especially amongst women. I love speaking to women because I am a woman, and I see a lot of women who are coming to me at that menopause, they're around 50 years old. They're like, Louisa, I'm perimenopause, I'm going into menopause. And they're scared about getting dementia. They're scared about getting Alzheimer's disease. The first thing I say is, do you do resistance training? Because resistance training is where the magic is. Your muscles are like pharmacies, and they hold these medications inside them that are there to protect and serve your brain. They hold these things called myokines. They are muscle-based proteins. And when you contract your muscle, these myokines seep into the blood, and they go and affect different organs in the body, especially your brain. They help with brain cell growth. They help with executive functions. They help with inflammation. They help fight off cancer.
Luisa Nicola, welcome to Your Health Matters. How you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Carl. How are you?
I'm really excited you're with me. I'm following you for quite a long time, and I love the work you're doing, and I love your education. So bravo to you on doing such a great job bringing relevant information to us about longevity and health span.
Thank you. I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah, you're really changing the world. We need people like you, and I'm so glad you're here. As a movement specialist, if you will, here in New York, and having a clinic where we help people with, aging, basically. I look at it we're all getting older. None of us are getting younger chronologically. But it seems that we see an awful lot of cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's. Well, we could go into obesity, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, pain, osteoporosis, osteopenia, high fall risk, Parkinson's, and the list goes on and on and on. But what I'm particularly fascinated with is this idea and this area of brain health. But also curious to know your take, your view on Alzheimer's. I mean, this is a condition that is affecting so many people, and the projections aren't looking good if we don't do something about it. I wonder if you can share some knowledge about that with us, because this is a big deal.
It's a big deal, and a lot of people don't see it as a big deal. I think people see Alzheimer's disease and dementia as a natural progression into the aging process. I'll probably get dementia when I'm 90. And I hear so many people saying that, and I think, it's not part of the natural brain aging process. We don't have to get dementia. We don't have to get Alzheimer's disease. Dementia is the umbrella term. It's the term that we use to describe a set of these cognitive abilities that we have that tend to decline: processing speed, memory, our intellect, our ability to think and process information. They seem to decline, and we call that dementia. But there's different forms of dementia. It depends on what the pathology is on a brain scan. For example, you've got dementia with Lewy bodies, you've got Parkinson's dementia, frontotemporal dementia. Then you've got Alzheimer's disease. And the reason why we know so much about Alzheimer's disease, well, not know so much, but the reason why we hear about it is because it's the most prominent type. We've got 55 million people worldwide that have the disease. It's around 9 million in the US alone. And then we've got, this number is going to triple by the year 2050. They are the projections. And in my opinion, it's going to be the collapse of the healthcare system, the economic healthcare system, because there is a huge economic burden that's involved in this disease. But if you look at this disease, you see on pathology that there's two main proteins at stake here. You've got amyloid beta and you've got tau proteins. And we'll look into that a bit more, because when you look at the brain, Carl, you see, so the brain is around 3.5 pounds in weight, and it's the most vascular rich organ in the entire body. So it's got so many blood vessels. Then you've got around 87 billion neurons. They are the chief brain cell. They're electrically active. And the way that they communicate with one another is via an electrical signal called a synapse. And every neuron has around 5 to 10,000 connections per cell. So you can imagine your brain, if you do the math on that, it is just trillions of connections per second that your brain is operating on. And when we're seeing dementia, what we see is that the amyloid beta, this protein that builds up in the brain, which, by the way, it's not a bad thing, and we'll get into that later on. But this amyloid beta tends to accumulate outside of the cells, and it interferes with the transmission between the cells. So that we've got that there, and then we've got the tau protein, and that tau lives in the neurofibrillary tangles of the axon. Mm-hmm. What happens then is once it accumulates there, it ends up collapsing the axon. So Carl, you can see that this disease is really it is scary, but it's also preventable. In fact, around 95 to 97% of the current Alzheimer's disease cases are driven through lifestyle factors. They're not genetically predetermined to get the diseases.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because this has become a really big topic, if you will, for a lot of things. For example, Ray Dorsey, Dr. Dorsey out of the University of Rochester, right down the road from me, he talks, when he and I talk, he talks about Parkinson's is preventable largely by lifestyle. Yes. And rarely, he and Dr. Shumei Wong down at Hershey Penn State, she talks about, this is like 5 to 10% of people with Parkinson's have a family history of any kind of movement disorder, neurological issue. Few times do you see anybody with Parkinson's. So then it leads us to believe, or probably surmise, that it is exposure to something whether it be what we put in our bodies, what we're breathing, what we're drinking, what we're putting on our skin. So could you elaborate a little bit more on that when you talk about lifestyle?
Yeah. So
And the
I mentioned,
preventability of it, the preventability.
yeah, I mentioned before this protein called amyloid beta. Now, 20, 30 years ago, Alzheimer's disease, we used to call it the amyloid cascade hypothesis because we had no idea. We just thought, well, amyloid builds up and that's the demon. We demonized this protein, but we now know that that's not entirely the thing that is causing the disease in the first place. Amyloid is a protein that protects your brain against attacks. And it's part of the innate immune system. That's our primary defense system that gets activated in response to a threat. So you imagine you become inflamed, for example. You're stressed, inflammatory markers go up. Your brain is like, she's under attack. Let's shield the brain and protect it. And so we raise the level of amyloid in our brain. But what happens is, Carl, because we're probably all walking around, a lot of us may be walking around with amyloid in our brain.
Yeah.
And we can see as well, you can get a 90-year-old who's full of amyloid, but they won't get any form of dementia, right? So amyloid's not the issue here. Amyloid serves as a protective barrier. But if we are not diligent on our sleep, for example, or exercise or stress reduction, we don't have the ability to clear out the amyloid through the brain. So being able to sleep well, being able to exercise daily, being able to have great food, stay hydrated, these are the lifestyle factors that people are just missing out on. And there is something to be said of ultra-processed foods and obviously insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes being risk factors for dementia and Alzheimer's disease. We know that. But I think we have to really look at it from a inflammatory perspective. If we can, and we can think to ourselves,
Keep going. We got another minute.
if we can think to ourselves, how can we control inflammation? I think that's the question that everyone should be waking up and asking themselves. How can we lower the inflammatory burden on my central nervous system and entire body? That is the question, because you will have a better performing brain if you do.
I am so glad you brought that up because that's on my list of questions. So I'll tell you what, we're going to head out to a break here in a few seconds. We're with Luisa Nicola. We're talking about all things health, longevity, health span, and the lifespan. Right now, we're talking about the brain, Alzheimer's, and we'll get into more of this when we come back. This is Your Health Matters. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. All right, we're back, and we're talking with Luisa Nicola today. So let's talk more about this. We were talking about some of these things that if we can improve them, for example, sleep, improve our sleep. If we exercise more, we know that that can help our brain and our body, right? Stress reduction, that's something I need to learn how to do. I'm working on it because, quite honestly, I don't want to manifest problems, but I can't imagine my cortisol levels from time to time and what that's doing to me. But also the inflammation factor. So all these things play a vital role in so many different aspects of health and brain health. I'll let you go wherever you want with this, and just let's continue because this is so important.
Yeah, I love the idea of basically let's work up towards I call it our pyramid of human performance at Neuroathletics, which is my company. At the bottom of the pyramid, we need to do the first thing is you need to exercise. That is at the bottom of the pyramid. You need to build your brain and your body because exercise is fundamentally the biggest lever for not just preventing, but slowing the rate of getting Alzheimer's disease. So you can actually, and this is the area that I study the most. I first authored a paper that looked at the associations of resistance training on mild cognitive impairment. So exercise, I think as a whole, Carl, you look at the US population, around 70% of the US population is not meeting the physical activity guidelines. Yeah. That's so scary, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's more. That's just the people who were actually documented. Let's just say maybe it's around 80% are not meeting the physical activity guidelines. The ones that are, maybe they're still not even doing it right. Maybe they're still going to the gym and they're not working out appropriately. So when you think about exercise, I want people to think about, I'm not just building my body, I'm building a better brain. I mentioned earlier that the brain is the most vascular rich organ in the entire body. So you've got blood vessels, you've got little capillaries, they're 1 cell thick, you've got veins, you've got arteries. They supply the brain with blood. The blood supplies oxygen and nutrients. So the more that you're exercising, aerobic exercise, let's just think about aerobic. You're going for your long runs. You are getting massive amounts of blood flow to the brain.
Yeah.
Right? And not just that, when you're engaging in aerobic activity, you're sending signals to your brain to grow new brain cells and new neurons in the hippocampus of the brain. And the hippocampus is this seahorse-shaped structure deep in the temporal lobes. And arguably, this is the first thing to go during Alzheimer's disease, because this is the thing that controls our episodic memory and our long-term memory formation. So if that's the first thing to go, then we want to strengthen it. We want to make it bigger.
Absolutely.
We want to make it fluffy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but just in what I've taught, when I teach and travel about mostly Parkinson's is, if you will, what I'm known for, if I'm known for anything, and again, it's not about me, it's just we got to get the education out, is, I had John Rady at Harvard. I talked with him many times, but he was on the podcast before I had a radio show like 4 years ago, and he talks about how we are designed to move, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are designed to move. We're not designed to stay on couches. Okay, so we actually need to move. And then by virtue of moving, is even something as simple as brisk walking, you get these neurotrophic growth factors, these neuroprotective hormones and proteins like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and a slew of other things. Maybe even dopamine is enriched in production from movement, and that could help somebody with Parkinson's. But this is neuroprotective, isn't it? I mean, this will help us to slow, let's say, decay or death of dying brain cells. And I read something recently. It said it might even help birth new brain cells, but only in a couple areas. I think it's olfactory and hippocampus.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I don't know about any other brain areas that birth new cells, but isn't it exciting that we can just go for a walk and have it be good for our noggin?
Yeah, but not just that. What else we're doing is we're building new connections. You know how I said to you earlier, so those 5 to 10,000 connections per cell, they also die off. And if those connections are responsible for how we think, how we process information, how we throw balls, how we see the world, we want those connections there. And when you look at the studies, especially when you look at the scientific studies that are done on how does exercise improve brain health, you'll see that it says in there, brains grow, total gray matter volume grows. You have to think, well, what does that mean? That means that you are growing more connections. So the gray matter of the brain actually looks bigger. So your brain can look bigger on imaging just from exercise alone.
I didn't know that. I think that's really cool. I've seen a little bit of work with some of the EEGs, the portable EEGs, of brain activity during movement, and that's really interesting to watch. And also during certain cognitive tasks or executive function things. To watch the activity levels and how areas light up is kind of cool.
Correct.
Yeah. No, well, let's keep going with the brain health. So lifestyle. We've talked a little bit about exercise. I mean, we all hear it's good for us, and a lot of times we're just thinking our muscles, our cardiorespiratory, our lungs, our heart. Yeah, that's great, but just getting oxygen and blood flow to the brain, that's a game changer. How about could we go into, well, I'll save this next one for the next segment. I do want to talk about alcohol at some point. I got a story about that for you too, as a former heavy drinker. So we'll save that. Exercise, stress reduction, sleep. Can we touch on sleep real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah. This can help us a lot, can't it? With neuroplasticity, brain health, and everything.
Oh, not just that, Carl. It can also, that is the best way to clear out these amyloid beta proteins, right? Not just that. I live in Manhattan, right? I live right in the West Village, and it is crazy here.
Oh, I love it.
My brain is constantly under attack. from environmental toxins, from BPA, microplastics in the air. So every day I am accumulating these toxins just from just breathing the air. And I know everybody is as well. That's just 2024, unless you're living in the Amazon somewhere. So we're building up these toxins. We're also building up this amyloid beta at night, especially during deep, slow wave sleep. You have the ability to clear these out. And I'll tell you, paint an image for you, because your brain really acts as a washing machine during deep sleep. That's when we are really deep into sleep, where you kind of have to like make a huge noise to wake us up. During this, so we have other specialized brain cells called glial cells, and it comes from the Greek word glue, because they stick between the neurons. And this is arguably where the amyloid is as well. The amyloid is outside of the actual neuron, and that sticks near the glial cell. Now, during deep slow wave sleep, the glial cell shrinks in size. So when it shrinks, it allows for the cerebral spinal fluid to come through and wash the brain. So it's clearing out, and it really comes down here into the lymphatic system through the perivascular spaces. It clears out all of the debris, the toxins, the amyloid beta, it clears them out. So if you are not sleeping well, now, I actually read a study that said that most people in America are sleeping 6 hours a night. And to me, that's really, really scary, because you really can't get a lot of restoration in 6 hours a night.
Yeah, I need more.
Yeah.
I sleep
we all
6,
need
I
more.
don't feel good.
Yeah.
And I have people here who can vouch for that. So I'll tell you what, with that said, let's hold that thought. We'll go to break. You're listening to Your Health Matters. We'll be right back after this short break. Okay, we are back with Luisa Nicola. Let's talk more about sleep. So I'm going to just ask one question before I forget. I have this problem lately, and I never had this problem until lately. I don't know what it is. I wake up at exactly 4 o'clock, give or take maybe 2 minutes, and I can't go back to sleep for maybe an hour. I don't like it, because it never used to happen to me. I don't know what's going on, but why do we do that?
Do you
I mean,
switch
there's
the
many
lights on?
things. I'm sure there are a lot of contributing factors or possibilities, but...
Do you switch the lights on when you get up?
No, never.
Okay, that's good.
No.
Yeah, so there's many things at play. Actually, it turns out that a lot of people during the aging process, especially men, at a certain age, tend to wake up at around 4 a.m. and they go to the bathroom, and it could be something to do with the prostate and PSA, but that's look, you're not alone on that. That is a general complaint I hear. And then once you're up, what I hear a lot of is, I switch the bathroom light on, which then signals to the brain that you're awake, right? First thing in the morning. It's like your brain doesn't want to go back to sleep after that. So the best thing you can do is obviously try and go to the bathroom, maybe put some floor lighting on, and if you can, try as much to not stimulate yourself in those times. Like, don't look at your phone, and if you can, to try and go back to sleep. That's one thing that's at play. The second thing could just be you've got a racing mind, you've activated your sympathetic nervous system, it's woken you up, maybe you're hot. We know that you have to sleep in a cool environment and have a cold body temperature. There's so many things at play there.
Yeah. Well, so I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but where I learned about the light was from Andrew Huberman, talking
wonderful.
very, he just said it in such a way as, how the retina, on the lower side, the bottom side of the retina, those receptors are.
Yeah.
As soon as they get light from above, I mean, your brain thinks it's time to go and starts off the cortisol cycle. So I just feel my way to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm safe. I know it's too much information, but I sit because I don't want to make a mess. I'm not turning the light on. You know what I'm saying? And then I go back to bed, and I'm like, well, sometimes I'll go right back to sleep. I used to always go back to sleep. So maybe there is a lot going on here in business. So maybe I just need to calm my brain down or something like that. But we do know that the sleep factor, maybe it's a good time to talk about that too, is that whole sleep-wake cycle, because once we see the light in the morning, I mean, our brain wants to go. So
yeah.
it's probably really important to be mindful of not seeing the light until you're ready to see the light, like be awake. And so we can set ourselves up for a better sleep-wake cycle. As far as sleep goes, Walker has done so much in his wonderful book, Sleep Research, but looking into other people's research, I'm curious to know what are some ramifications, let's say consequences, long-term consequences of lack of sleep?
Oh, gosh. Where do I start? There's so much research that goes into, obviously, we'll touch on it, the Alzheimer's disease pathology. We literally can age our brain from not getting enough sleep. There's something to also be said of the amount of growth hormone and testosterone that's released during deep sleep as well. Because during those phases, you see a massive surge of testosterone, especially for men, which is why waking testosterone levels are measured in men. And that's why morning erections are actually a sign of very good health, because we get a lot of testosterone that is getting secreted at that time. Men need testosterone. So do women, don't get me wrong. But you can age yourself. You can literally have the testosterone reading of a 70-year-old at the age of 40, which is quite scary due to lack of sleep. And we know that testosterone is not just a hormone of libido, it's a hormone of vitality, motivation, strength, and health. So that's one thing. Also, the regeneration of your muscles from the growth hormone that gets released during sleep. But then there's this other camp of literature that I think is really fascinating, which looks at the correlation and association of sleep or lack thereof, sleep deprivation, and immunity. We see that from 6 hours a night of sleep, you can completely change your epigenetic or your genetic code. We've got around 20,000 genes in the human genome. And from 1 week of sleep deprivation, this was actually a study that was done in PNAS, and they showed that healthy men had an epigenetic change of 3%. So they changed 3% of their entire human genome. And the cells or the genes that were upregulated, like switched on, were the tumor-producing cells, and the genes that were switched off were the immunity, the ones that were responsible for immunity. So there's something to be said of sleep and cancer, or sleep and immunity. That's probably why. Have you ever felt, and I've felt this, I remember I've had really long weeks, 100-hour weeks, and I completely run myself to the ground, but I was running on adrenaline. So probably about a month. And then once that week, that month is over, I get sick. Right? And it's just due to all of that cortisol, all that inflammation, all of that sleep deprivation builds up, and then you just come crashing down.
Yeah. Oh, I'm very familiar with that. Very familiar with getting sick after running real hard, especially if there's travel involved. Mm-hmm. As I think about that, I'd like to talk about a little bit more about some things that a lot of us have done to our brain, or maybe we still do, that affect us negatively. And one of the things I've heard you speak about on other podcasts is alcohol. And we have enough time to talk a little bit about here in this segment and then continue. I'll just say I'm a former heavy drinker. One day I decided that I really needed to stop. I put the bottle down, and it was a struggle for a while, but now I never have the urge to drink, thankfully. I do have urges to drink coffee and eat a lot of really hot, like ghost peppers and things. It's a healthier addiction for me than the alcohol was, but I can tell you that when I was drinking, I was foggy. I was so foggy. I couldn't remember things. But there are long-term effects of this, and I was wondering if you could just talk about a little bit about the dangers of alcohol. And this is a dangerous thing if we're having it every day, especially if it's 3 or 4 or 5 drinks a day. I mean, a lot of people are.
Who are these people? I don't. When you say that, it's like, who? Where are they? I don't know where these people are. Are they out there?
No, I was one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not anymore.
No, never, ever. No, they're there. Oh, I know them. Some of them come here. They don't want to admit it. One admitted recently 3 glasses of wine a night. Big glasses.
7 nights a week.
Yeah.
Wow. Big glasses. Okay, great. So yeah, let's talk about it, because there is still this misconception that maybe wine is good for you. I think we've debunked that now. Yeah,
Thank you.
I think we've
Let's
debunked that now. So, and I get this question so often, Carl, when I talk about the detriments of alcohol. People say, are you talking about wine as well? It's like, yes, I'm talking about beer, wine, and spirits and anything else involved. Okay. So what does it actually do to the brain? Well, we know that even one drink can dramatically affect the cells in the brain. There's a great study that was done, and it came from the UK Biobank, which showed that you have reduced gray matter volume. So you're literally eating away at your brain cells, and you're actually forming white matter lesions from the brain. So you've got the white matter of the brain is the myelinated part of the neuron, right? And that's where we get all of our conduction speed, processing speed, etc. So we now have substantial evidence that alcohol, which, by the way, when you ingest alcohol, it turns into acetaldehyde, and acetaldehyde is literally poison. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they put acetaldehyde on weeds in the grass to kill it.
Yeah, sure, that'll help kill it.
That's what you're putting in your That's what you're putting in your body.
Yeah. This is well, it's just a little bit time before break, and I'll just say that I was with somebody recently who, slamming down 4 or 5 drinks in a couple hours. I'm at a bar, and I'm having club soda, and I'm not better than anybody. It's just that I'm not going to drink. I don't want to, and I won't. And then, she continued on later when I left, and I just feel really bad. So this is a family member, so it's really tough. It's tough to watch. I worry about her. But anyways, we're going to go to break. You're listening to Your Health Matters. We're going to continue in just a couple of minutes. We're back with Dr. Luisa Nicola. And so this alcohol thing, let's just go a little bit more with this, because there's other consequences too, right, to our body, not just the brain. Our fatty liver. My liver was out of whack for years. Of course it was out of whack. Now it's
You had
great.
alcoholic fatty liver disease?
Yeah. And then I had the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease too, because of course getting malaria, Belize didn't help me, but whatever. I mean, I got over it and everything's fine the past few years. But this leads to all kinds of potential issues. I mean, I'm no expert in this, but I'm pretty sure that Alzheimer's might be one of them. Dementia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about what else can happen, long-term use of alcohol. And
I think, it's really implicated in the breast cancer disease pathology. Yeah. So anybody who is, any female, I would strongly recommend not even going near alcohol. Now, as a caveat, I will tell you, I enjoy a glass of red wine. I average 1 full glass every 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm not a drinker per se, but I maybe have 1 glass a month, if you will. So we know that the associations of alcohol on certain types of cancer is increased. So that's another thing to think about as well. But I don't think we should think about it as disease pathology. I think we should think about it as, first of all, what is it doing in the interim? Your body is like compound interest, right? That's how I see the world. That's how I see all of the people that I serve. It's compound interest, meaning that 1 night of sleep deprivation probably won't do you harm, but consistent sleep deprivation will. 1 glass of alcohol a week probably won't break the bank. However, consistently, if you do even 2 glasses a week, that's a huge jump, right? So doing this consistently, then what does that lead to? Well, if you have a glass of wine or alcohol of any type, we know that it contains ethanol. Ethanol is a sedative. A sedative knocks you out. It doesn't allow you to get into sleep. So in the interim, you're blocking sleep. So you're not just killing the cells, you're blocking sleep. When you block sleep, you have all of the effects that I mentioned earlier, the increased risk of dementia, cancer, lowered immunity. We also see increases in depressive-like symptoms, anxiety. People with ADHD should definitely stay away from alcohol because it can suppress norepinephrine. It can suppress dopamine. These are the neurochemicals that you need and you're already depleted in. So basically you're saying to your brain, I know you're at the mercy of everything, but I'm gonna slam you even harder and make you work even harder. So it's not about the direct correlation. It is about what's happening to our behavior as a result of drinking and ingesting alcohol, which then plays on disease pathology.
Yeah, I made plenty of bad decisions after a few drinks, too many times, and that cost a lot of everything. So I appreciate you sharing this, and I think I'd like to move on to another question, but before I do, I have one thought I'd like to provoke in people. Don't lie to yourself like I lied to myself, okay? If you're drinking and you know you're drinking and you shouldn't be drinking, then perhaps it's time to do something about it. I was able to put down the bottle and stop. Well, big deal. It worked for me, though. Not a lot of people can. I don't know. Maybe they can, but I know people who get help. There is help available. So you can seek help, but you first have to admit it, and I don't want to get into the whole psychology because I'm no expert, but I just say, when is now a good time to take notice? When is now a good time to maybe make some changes? And maybe that's one of them for some people out there. There are a lot of addictions we can have. Sugar. Well, I like salt. But anyways, speaking of addictions, I think I'm done with that. I want to move on. I want to talk about brain health as far as feeding our brain. Things we can do to feed our brain and optimize its function for as long as possible in our lifespan. So a good brain health span. And included in that, I'm wondering if you would, are there benefits to taking creatine for brain health?
I'm crying.
But see, I think you'd say yes because I heard you talk about it, but please enlighten us because I doubled my dose to 10 grams. No, I'm just saying that's
wonderful.
Because of what you said on something I saw a few months ago. I'm like, I'm going to a double scoop now.
Yeah, so, well, it's 10 to 12 for cognitive benefits. So creatine is a naturally occurring molecule produced in the liver, but it's only produced in small amounts. We can also get it from meat, liver, like organ meats is really, really fantastic source of creatine. Creatine helps with cell energy metabolism. It helps with the regeneration of ATP, which is the cell's main energy source. So who doesn't want more energy? Who doesn't need more energy? We all need more energy. And it also pushes water into the cell. This is why people feel a bit maybe bigger or bloated when they have it, but you're not really bloated as in fat. You're just retaining water. So when you go to the gym, you can push heavier. We used to think of creatine as this molecule that was just good for the body, but we now have substantial evidence that it's also good for the brain. In fact, at dosages of 10 to 12, we can actually, because you lose some of the bioavailability when it crosses the blood-brain barrier, it can actually get into the cell and it can help the brain cell produce more energy. So you need energy for the brain. Remember, your brain acts as in, I keep having these, I keep correlating biology to business, but your brain is really, you've got this supply and demand issues. You have to have enough supply in the brain cells. Your brain cells have to have enough supply to meet the demand of every day. You wanted to give it creatine, you give it more supply, right? So you're giving it more energy when you have creatine. Most people, I believe, are taking around 5 grams a day. If they're not, I don't know why. You should be taking at least 5 grams a day, irrespective of your blood work or whoever. You can take it. It doesn't degrade in heat, so you can just put a scoop of it in your coffee. You can put a scoop of it in your water, whatever, we can have it whenever you want. You don't have to load it, and it doesn't cause hair loss or kidney issues.
Yeah, right. That's a big deal. Yeah, and I've heard you talk about this on the past, so I did double my dose. And, well, I just kind of, I told my mom when I was 5, and some listeners already heard this. I'm 63 now, but I'm telling you, I'm going to live to be a very functional 100 and something.
I can't wait to see it.
I do all the things I can to keep my brain going because I don't want to lose that, and I want to keep going and being productive, live a healthy fun life. So this is really cool. So we got a couple minutes left before the end of the hour, but I want to let everybody know that we're going to go into a little overtime, a segment of overtime, which can only be seen at carlsterling.net. That's Carl with a K, carlsterling.net. So once we're done with this segment and we're off the air, go to carlsterling.net, look for the episode with Luisa Nicola, and you can continue listening there. You'll get the whole episode plus a few minutes extra. For people on the air right now, with about 90 seconds left before the end of the last segment, what's your takeaway message for listeners at this point right now?
You have the power to have any life you want, whether it's a life that is high performing, whether you want to live to 100, whatever that is, you have the power to do it, but it comes from having a high performing brain. So as long as you are sticking with Mother Nature, the further you move away from Mother Nature, the more dangerous it becomes. Stick with Mother Nature's gifts and you will be good.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, we know we're supposed to be moving. We're designed to move. So we need to move. Life's different now. We can press a button and get DoorDash to bring us new batteries if we need them. We don't need to go to the store to buy anything anymore. You know, we got Amazon, we got everything. But we need to move. So we may have to just find the time, make the time, get moving. Get the, feed your body whole foods. Things grandmother would have ate, or your great grandmother for some people maybe. Things that grow and aren't processed. I mean, this is really important stuff. So we're going to head out, and you're listening to Your Health Matters here on the iHeart Network. Our guest is the amazing Dr. Luisa Nicola. My name is Carl Sterling. Going to overtime for another segment at carlsterling.net. That's Carl with a K, and we'll see you there. All right, we are in overtime with Luisa Nicola. Okay, let's continue with this brain stuff because this is so fascinating. Where do we leave off? I think we were going to talk about nutrients for the brain, possibly.
Yeah, look, the other nutrient I would definitely recommend is getting on a high quality omega-3 supplement. We know that 20% of the total lipids in the brain, the fat component of the brain, is made of DHA. DHA comes from fatty fish. You've got it that comes from salmon and mackerel and sardines. But unfortunately, because of the way that our fishes are farmed, we're not really getting the nutrient profile. So having a high source of omega-3 fatty acids that come from a supplement, make sure that you're pulling for a reputable company that has third-party testing on their supplements. That's important. But I'm generally having around 2 to 4 grams a day. And not just that, it's not just good for the brain. It serves as a protectant for the brain cells. It helps with cell membrane fluidity, but it is an amazing inflammatory down regulator. So it's pretty much Advil, if you will, but just a safer kind and one that won't hurt the lining of your stomach. So I'll end on that. And then also remember that your brain loves antioxidants and polyphenols. I have blueberries every day. Carl, it's my dream to get out of New York City one day and have a backyard where I'm growing these beautiful berries that are really good for the brain.
Move to Syracuse.
Oh, well,
No, I'm kidding.
Or Sardinia, or Greece, or Portugal. Yeah,
Even better. She's agreeing with me.
and something that we didn't touch on is muscle mass. And I think that this is very underrated as well, especially amongst women. I love speaking to women because I am a woman, and I see a lot of women who are coming to me at that menopause, they're around 50 years old. They're like, Louise, I'm perimenopause, I'm going into menopause. And they're scared about getting dementia. They're scared about getting Alzheimer's disease. The first thing I say is, do you do resistance training? Because resistance training is where the magic is. Your muscles are like pharmacies, and they hold these medications inside them that are there to protect and serve your brain. They hold these things called myokines. They are muscle-based proteins. And when you contract your muscle, these myokines seep into the blood and they go and affect different organs in the body, especially your brain. They help with brain cell growth. They help with executive functions. They help with inflammation. They help fight off cancer. But the process of building muscle is where it's at. The process of actually going to the gym and doing resistance training is the beauty. But building muscle and building strength, I think, are fundamentally important, because what are you doing? You're not just building more mitochondria, because we know that the mitochondria lives in the cells or the muscle fibers, but you're also working with bone density, because when you pull, contract a muscle, it pulls on the bone. And what happens in these menopausal women? What happens? We know that they've the lack of estrogen.
Yeah.
Of course.
I see it all the time.
Yep, you see it all the time. And then the CDC in 2018 released that a study that showed that the number one cause of death amongst 80-plus-year-olds is falls. So we have to think about that. And by the way, you can't just think about it when you're 75 or 80. It takes time to build muscle. I would know. I am a female. I'm nowhere near that age. I'm in my 30s, in my early 30s, but it is hard for me, and I'm pushing heavy weights. So I want to tell the females out there, because I see it with men, I see it with only females. They're scared of weights. They're scared of lifting heavy.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I want to tell them, get out there and do it.
I actually, what I run into for many, many years doing this, I don't want to get bulky. Trust me, I've been trying for years. You won't get bulky. You'll just get a little bigger. Your clothes will fit tighter because you're all swollen up after a workout. Don't worry, it won't last that long where you're not going to blow up.
No.
I just have to put in some shameful self-promotion a little bit. At our neuromotor training facility here, we have this machine called it's a couple things we do. But one of them I just remember I think used too, but this one is called biodensity. Mm-hmm. And this machine is designed to reverse bone density through max osteogenic force production.
Oh, wow.
Has ever heard of OsteoStrong? This is the original OsteoStrong. OsteoStrong actually leases the IP and the technology from biodensity. So Lee Hillman, thank you, Lee, and Joe Kohler, who Lee owns PowerPlate, which we have 5 PowerPlates here, whole body vibration, which we use for a lot of things from neuropathy to blood circulation to bone density, joint stability, spinal stability, posture, building muscle, shedding the fat. It complements the biodensity. You're put into positions where you're forcing about 6 to 7 times what you can do in the same respective exercise, chest press, leg press, as on a regular machine, full range of motion. It's isometric max force loading. And I'm happy to report that we have countless people coming in after, 6, 7, 8 months of improved DEXA scans.
Oh, that's amazing.
They are actually reversing. Some are completely out of osteoporosis. Some are partially out, but they're on their way. And it's really, really cool. So for anyone who hasn't heard of biodensity, check it out because it's amazing. Another thing we do for longevity, and this is your platform to share with you, but we use the Pinoy VO2
Oh,
Max.
nice. You're doing the
You and I got
tests?
tagged together on a Pinoy post recently by Apostoles, the owner or the founder.
Oh, nice.
You know Apostoles, I'm sure. So we do VO2 Max and resting metabolic testing because we want to know all this stuff. Because it helps us to help in so many different arenas.
I tell everybody that no matter what age you are, do a VO2 max test because it enables you to measure where you're at. We can't optimize what we don't measure. Doesn't matter whether you're 80. You don't have to go and run at full pace. You can literally, it's just getting you to your max. You may just put the incline up and walk really fast.
Yeah.
Everyone should get this done.
Well, I love this system because, the metrics we get, as I know you're familiar with, it'll tell you even on rest and metabolic tests, and those tests can be completely different. I actually had a really good VO2 score last time on my birthday in June. My resting test wasn't as good as the previous one. Well,
really?
Yeah. I'd have to go back and see what it was, but I needed to gain more muscle mass, and I'd already put on a bunch. But where else can we pull these metrics? We can't. This is a unique way of, like Elizabeth says, actually, breath analysis of this type should be normal. This should be routine, like blood and urine and other things. So it's really, there's so much we can do. And just to circle back around now, we can find out our resting metabolic rate, our metabolic fitness, or whatever we can find out. And if we need more muscle mass, and most of us can use some, but as we age, muscle being the foundation for all movement, we got to keep that going so we stay upright and have strong bones, so we're not a high fracture risk and fall down. And all those stats that falls after 65 years old, none of them are good.
No. Look, Carl, I think you're doing amazing work. I think you are pushing civilization forward. You're helping my mission, which is to shrink the mortality curve and end cognitive decline. So thank you so much for being on this journey with me.
Well, I just inadvertently hijacked the conversation. I really didn't mean to do that.
No, I'm glad you
did. This is a platform for you to share, but I guess what I wanted to do is this synergy of we are thinking, you're a doctor, I'm not, but I have my specialty, you do what you do, and what you've taught me so much from all these podcasts I watched, and I love what you're doing. And, it's about us, people coming together and educating so people can live a better quality of life, and you're doing amazing work.
Thank you. I hope so. I'm doing a lot of science. I'm a scientist at heart, and I'm doing a lot of reading and researching and academic writing and writing papers just to kind of understand for myself why we've got this huge burden of Alzheimer's disease. That is my space. I live it. I breathe it. I'm attacking it from all angles. So over the next 2 to 3 years, I think you'll have a much greater understanding if you keep following my work of what this disease is, because I'll have a lot more information to share.
Oh, we want to know that. We want to have you back on too. Let me ask you this. I have one more question if you have just 2 minutes.
Let's do it.
So first of all, you're from Australia, is that correct?
I am. I'm from Australia. My parents are from Cyprus, a country called Cyprus.
Okay, now, did you, I'm just curious, in Australia, I had heard, and I could be completely off base with this, and I don't know where I heard it, but I feel like it was a reputable source, like Nature's Review or something like that, that in Australia, people who get chemotherapy in certain places, after their treatments, they were sent right over to a gym down the hall in certain hospitals to exercise, and the chemotherapy uptake was so much more effective. And I just wondered if you've heard anything about that.
I didn't know that only happens in Australia, but yes, the chemotherapy is way more effective if you are exercising. We've seen that in studies. It's a study that I actually cited on Dr. Gabrielle Lyon's podcast, where I showed that from exercise, you can reduce your risk of 13 types of cancers. We know that, and that's as little as 30 minutes a day of exercise. But it also showed that you've got a greater chance of going into remission because of the positive prognostic value that it has when you're getting chemotherapy. I didn't know that only happens in Australia, though. That just makes me even more proud and more happy.
I think that, you should be, because there are a lot of medical advancements that I believe may have started there. I think this is one of them that started there. I could be wrong, but that's where I heard that and now it's here too. I mean, it's here too. And then the other thing, having cornea transplants in my life, the first country to do the artificial transplant was in Australia. That was Australia. So I got a plastic cornea.
You know more about this than me. You know more about it than me.
Well, I only know a few things, and you know a lot of things. So, no, this was so much fun to have you joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carl.
I could go out and talk for hours for you. So another time down the road, maybe next year, let's do it again. Get you back on the show. And get any books coming out or anything like that?
No, I will maybe in the next 3 years. But right now, I'm just deep in the weeds of researching, so I have something to write about.
Beautiful. Well, listen, thank you. Grateful to have you here.
Thank you.
Bravo to you. Keep up the great work, and let's stay in touch. And for everybody listening, thank you. And for everybody listening, thanks so much for listening to the overtime and the whole episode and everything. And I hope you have a great day. Remember, move your body, use your brain every single day. Very important. Take care, folks. and thank you. All right.